We're frothing and raring to go.
Yes.
And we're ready to start recording.
Premier League Game Week 33. There's a lot to explore with this one. But before we go into that, we like to look at our wins as well. So Sam, Ollie, we did well with the Champions League once again. Not to gloat, but I think we called pretty much all of them. Do you want to start us off, Ollie, with examining how we did very well with our calls for the midweek matches?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to talk about this, Jason, because you nailed it once again. I think you were convinced Arsenal would win both legs, and had it not been for William Saliba's disaster class, I think your win to 0 would have looked like an absolute screamer of a pick. So fair play. I think we all knew that Arsenal would go there and get qualified because we all backed their defence over Madrid's attack, but I was a bit surprised by how bad Real Madrid's attack actually was, and that cost me in the end. I had Mbappe to have 2 shots on target. He didn't even have one, and he got hooked after about an hour. He was that bad. So yeah, that cost me. I think the Inter and Bayern game, there were more goals than I think we expected, given it finished 2-2, but we knew Harry Kane would be there or thereabouts. Bastoni committed a foul in about the first 30 seconds, so that was nice. So yeah, I think Kylian Mbappe cost me and every Real Madrid fan last night.
The way they were bigging it up before as well, me and Ollie were just talking about this off camera as well. When you big yourself up that much ahead of it, like Onana did ahead of the Lyon game last week, saying that United are a way better side, there's very limited upside and there's so much downside. You can make yourself look an absolute twat, and even if it comes off, no one thinks, oh, you're really big and clever for that. But saying that, Real Madrid had the kind of, I think what they were going for is just wanting to make Arsenal a bit nervous. Like, we're all bang up for it, we've done this a million times, we're confident we're going to steamroll you, just to put extra nerves in Arsenal. But it didn't work, did it? Arsenal just looked like their normal selves. Their defence is just unreal. It feels like, we were saying as well off camera, you could have played that game 10 times and Arsenal would win 10 out of 10. Similarly, when I flicked onto Inter, they just look so organised at the back. And I think this Champions League, these semi-finals, is the highest quality of semi-finals we've had in years and years and years, in terms of the quality is spread out, isn't it?
So let's get into the predictions for the Premier League. And like you said there, we've done really well with our picks. So do check out the numbersgame.uk website. And also we are doing some competitions as well for those of you who do really, really well. But more of that a little bit later. So let's get into Saturday's first game, Brentford versus Brighton. And I think this one's going to be a tight fixture. I can't really separate the two. But Sam, what are you calling with this one?
So this one is a favourite for us, as I always go on about. It's like the football data derby. The owners of both of these clubs own sports books. They're both like professional gamblers. They both, in fact, one of them worked for the other one. So it's Matthew Benham, Tony Bloom. It'll mean a lot to the owners. Whether that trickles down to the players, I don't know. But it's funny how they're sitting close to each other in the table. They're about 5 points apart. And both of these have got such good systems organisationally, like the whole clubs. And they're both so different as well on the pitch, which makes it interesting. But Brentford's home form is atrocious, and Brighton are the much better team on paper, but so inconsistent. So it's a really interesting game to try and bet on. Across the last 10, I noticed Brentford have been really good defensively, conceded less than a goal a game despite having pretty hard fixtures. Brighton are good value, which is a bit of a red flag usually, as we found out at Crystal Palace at the weekend. Last night, sorry. So my picks for this one, I'm staying away from the overall result altogether. I'm going Nathan Collins foul and a Carlos Baleba foul, which is like death and taxes as well.
I think this is a bit of a dead rubber game personally. Brentford are 11th and Brighton are 10th. Brighton could still sneak into a Conference League spot, but whether the players actually are motivated by that and whether the manager will actually want that, I'm unsure. I think it presents them an opportunity to win a trophy next season, of course, but it is a massive distraction and there's hardly any money in it. So I think I don't think that is a motivation for the players. I think this is a proper on the beach kind of tie. The last 2 games between these two sides have finished 0-0. I wouldn't be surprised to see another one here, although Brighton did concede 2 against Leicester at the weekend. But this isn't a Brentford side that are scoring goals like we associated them with at the start of last season. They've only got 4 goals in the last 5 matches. I'll caveat that by saying the last 3 games have been against Newcastle, Chelsea and Arsenal, and they picked up 2 points in those 3 games. So, all right return. They've been solid at the back, not really firing up front. Sam mentioned Brighton are very unpredictable. Brighton, it's a simple formula. Every time I watch them, they're crap. And every time I don't watch them, they seem to be a decent side. So I quite fancied Wissa shot on target and Wissa to commit a foul as well. Just because over the last 10 games, he's averaged more than a shot on target per game, and that's against better opposition. He hoovers up a lot of big chances, and he also commits a lot of fouls. He's averaged 1.2 across the last 10 games. So a vicious shot on target and foul comes in at over evens, which I think could be a decent pick.
One more thing as well about being on the beach. I can't believe this. There's two things actually for it. One is that book I read about the Italian third division side, and by the time it got to the end of the season, they were literally match fixing and throwing the game. If one team had nothing to play for and the other wanted to qualify for Europe, like Brighton, the owners would just transfer a bit of cash and then the players would throw the game. Not saying that's happening in the Prem, but an unnamed source of mine who's a professional footballer said when he was playing, I think it would have been in League One at the time, when it got near the end of the season, there was nothing to play for. They'd finished their game and there was no training. They go, actually, see you Saturday, lads. A bit of time off for the players. There was nothing to play for. So it really, really does have an impact. It's not just something that we've kind of assumed.
Yeah. Are you insinuating that Brentford and Brighton won't have trained this week?
Brentford won't have done. Brighton will go Conference League.
Thomas Frank's been in the boozer all week.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And what would he drink? Oh, fucking whatever it's called where you drop a Jaeger into a Guinness or something like that.
Thomas Frank?
Yeah, he's a proper golf.
He's a wine geezer, I reckon.
No, he's a rocker.
He's a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. Right, let's keep it rolling. Jason, what are your picks, mate?
Well, the thing is my gut is arguing against the data with this one. What was that noise?
Sam's arse. He just farted and it stinks.
My gut is arguing the data with this one.
My gut's apparently arguing the data as well.
The two sides are blank 15 times this season. Brentford 10 times without scoring. Brighton 5. Last two matches, as you said, Ollie, goalless. But the AI is projecting this one to have lots of goals. It said clean sheets are unlikely, over 2.5 goals. So this just makes me unwilling to place any bet at all. Even the kind of Visa shots on targets, I just think it will probably be that kind of end-to-end scummy football without any kind of quality. Even that, I just see this one, like you said, Ollie, as a dead rubber, not much to play for. And so I'm not willing to kind of even put anything on this because it might ruin an ACCA and anything like that. I think there's more worth in the next one that we're going to talk about, which is Crystal Palace versus Bournemouth. We kind of have to look at Crystal Palace. Last two games, Newcastle, Man City. That one's quite difficult. That interrupts their amazing run. But Bournemouth had just been, drib and drab basically since the start of the year. So this one's also kind of hard to call. Sam, with your leaky bottom, what do you want to say on this one?
Bournemouth are the side that, ever since I said that they were the best team in the league, they've won 3 in 10 games. They've been kind of woeful. They're still putting up decent enough numbers. They're generating 1.88 XG per game, which is a really good amount of creativity in the team. But that's not translating to goals at the moment. Again, it's probably a game that's difficult to bet on because Palace had this unbelievable run of form and then got their arse handed to them by Newcastle. But it's worth saying that they had the better data after the game. This is like a stark reminder that football's played on the pitch if you needed reminding. I certainly did.
Yeah, I think Bournemouth, Iraola's teams seem to fade at the end of the season, don't they? They do a lot of running, they do a lot of pressing, and they do a lot of quick counter-attacks. And this seems to be a bit of a theme where in the final stage of the season they seem to drop off the boil a little bit. Palace themselves have definitely dropped off the boil in the last two. They've conceded 10 goals, and they'll have one eye on the FA Cup semi-final, which is next weekend, and they do have a game in between then as well against Arsenal. So I think there'll be some early rotation. I think Mateta's not quite recovered from his head injury. He seems to be struggling to get through 60 or 70 minutes at the moment. Strangely enough, in both of the games that Palace shipped 5 goals in, the games could have been very different. I mean, if that Eze goal wasn't offside by a knee against City, they would have been 3-0 up. And against Newcastle, if he hadn't took that stinking penalty, then they would have been in the game. So they seem to have found a bit of a habit of capitulating at the wrong time. But I don't think Bournemouth will have enough to push them that far. And I could see this. I could see both teams taking a draw here, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't mind also maybe an Evan Nilsson shot on target because he scored 6 goals in his last 8 games. He's got the highest % chance of scoring of anyone on the pitch. and he's averaging in his last 10 1.1 shots on target per game. And like you said, Brighton have conceded 10 goals in the last 2 games.
Yeah, I think one more thing that I'd point out is Antoine Semenyo. He was on the verge of being suspended if he picked up another yellow card because he's got 10, I think, for the season. That worry has now subsided. He's played enough games now where he won't get suspended if he does pick up another yellow, and he's been averaging 2.2 fouls per game across the last 10, and he's been a serial fouler across the season, so it's always worth looking at Semenyo to commit a foul, and that's pretty much the only thing I'd be confident in backing in this one.
Is there a less than 4 in there as well, Ollie?
There could be a less than 4 in there, but I'd be a bit hesitant given the fact that Crystal Palace have shipped 10 goals in the last 2 games.
Yeah, I'm backing the goals with this one. And I remember in 2019, there was 8 goal fest right at the end of the season. I think this one might not deliver as many goals, but I think it'll still be very exciting end-to-end game. I like the shout of the Evan-Nielsen shot on goal. Bournemouth's problem this season has just been the kind of in and out of fitness of a lot of their front line. You know, Sinistera, will he play this weekend? Kluivert, will he be back as well? You know, the fact that both of their defensives has shipped a lot of goals in their last pretty recent run. So Palace conceding 17 in their last 11, Bournemouth 15 in their last 11. That's what I'm kind of backing over 2.5 goals. Maybe the Evan-Nielsen is a shout as well. Moving on to Aston Villa versus Newcastle, which is probably a really important game for both of these teams. It could decide whether they make Champions League or not for the season. I think the European midweek game, though, will have really kind of impacted what the outcome of this one will be, because, you know, the villains will be coming into this psychologically a bit down, you know, physically fatigued, and they're taking on Newcastle team that just keep moving strength to strength. But do we have to factor in that amazing run that Villa have been on with 9 wins in their last 10 games? Should we kind of discount that at all? And also look at the way that they play against PSG. What are you saying with this one, Ollie?
Yeah, I think this is one of those X narratives where you can push it either way you want to. You could say, yeah, they've got dumped out of the Champions League against PSG, and it was heartbreak hotel for them. You know, they fought up to the last minute, blah, blah, blah. Or you could say, you know, if you're going to go out the Champions League, that's the way to do it. They died on the sword. They really went for it. At one stage, it was looking bleak, like they could get hammered, and they really made a game of it. The fans, I think, rightly so, clapped them off and thought, you know, every player on that pitch gave everything they could. So maybe going into this, they'll know it's another massive game. We've talked about Villa's home form on here tons of times before. They're one of the best teams in the league at Villa Park. I think they're 4th overall for home record. I think they've got strength and depth enough to rotate. Your guess is as good as mine for who's going to start for this Villa team. I'd bet money on Morgan Rogers because he seems to be indestructible. I'd bet money on Ezri Konsa and Emi Martinez. But other than that, it could be anyone. I think Rashford seems to have nailed down the starting number 9 spot. And if you could guarantee he was going to play, he would be worth a flutter. But when you've got Ollie Watkins sat on the bench raring to go, I wouldn't be surprised to see him start either. So I don't like touching any of the players from Villa. Newcastle, you mentioned, come into this on really good form. Since they won that cup, they've been absolutely unbelievable. But I think you have to always take these results with a pinch of salt. I mean, we talked about Crystal Palace capitulating, but that could have been a different game had Eze not taken such a bad penalty. And before that, they played against Leicester. This will be the litmus test, I think, for Newcastle. I think if they get a result here, they'll go on, kick on for the rest of the season and easily finish in the top 5. Whereas if it's a bit of a cagey affair, then it's still all up for grabs for me. So when it comes to the result, I'm not going to touch it. But what I am fancying is there'll be goals in this one. It's a Newcastle attack that are purring. It's an Aston Villa defensive unit and midfield unit that will be carrying a bit of fatigue. I always expect Villa to score at home, though. They've got more than enough strength in attack to do that. So I'm backing over 2.5 in this one. Talked about Joe Linton so many times before, but when he plays, he commits fouls. So stick him on there to commit a foul. And I also quite fancy John McGinn for that same reason. He's a serial fouler, especially in big games. I mean, he was at it all night against PSG, fouling, diving, getting stuck in. So I think if John McGinn does play, he would be worth sticking on there as a foul as well. But I'd probably wait to see the lineup before I put that on.
And Sam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got to agree with the goal fest because I've kind of noted the same thing. What these two teams, Villa and Newcastle, I see them as quite similar. Like their stats are similar, but they're also at similar stages in their kind of development where they're like pushing on to be a top team, and they've progressed like surprisingly quickly, both of them. In this game, it's tough to call the result. I'm backing both teams to score. I agree with over 2.5, and the Joe Linton foul is just textbook, isn't it? He averages nearly 2 per game over the whole season.
I think this will be a great game to watch. That's what I'd leave it on and say this is the pick of the weekend for me. If you're going to watch one football game, I'd tune into this one.
If you're having to battle it out with the missus, this is a fight worth. This is a hill worth dying on.
Yeah,
that was me for the Champions League semi-finals.
Was it?
Yeah.
One last thing as well, I would say is that if you do think Newcastle will win this, and you do put a lot of value on the fact that Villa have had the Champions League exploits and whatnot, bear in mind we've not touched upon the fact that Newcastle also played midweek. You can get good value for Newcastle to win this at 2-1.
Again, it might be worth sticking on as a separate bet. So you've got your Ake, your little bet builder going on, but Newcastle outright 2-1, stick it on as a single. I feel like the midweek games are quite different. Villa, like, they'll have left it all on the line against PSG, and Newcastle were 4-0 up within about half an hour. So it's kind of
that second half wouldn't have exerted any effort for them at all.
Exactly.
They're just on cruise control, and that's why I'm actually backing Newcastle with a double chance for this one. So I think it'll be draw or Newcastle to win. I'm also going with the over 2.5 goals, and both of you have mentioned the Joe Linton and McGinn fouls. I think that they're a given, but just the fact that Newcastle have 19 goals in their last 8 games, and also Barnes, Isaac, and Murphy 19 goal involvements between these three in that run of form. They're just looking absolutely amazing, this season. But for now, we're going to wish everybody the best of luck as always. And I want to remind people, do check out the Numbers Game website. All this data that we talked about is free for the Premier League. But if you want to have more of a chance and maybe dip into our knowledge a little bit more, there's some great packages on there, and also prizes for people who do really, really well. But for now, subscribe to the channel. We are making daily content, really high quality content as well. Like the video so that it gets spread a little bit more, so that we can share our winnings with everybody and have a fantastic game week 33